Welcome to the Drive Able podcast, where we discuss all things about driving and safer community transport for people with disabilities and medical conditions. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you go back and listen to episode 10. In that episode, we met Matt, and wow, what an interesting guy. What an amazing story of how a young male faced with huge adversity is overcoming and helping others. And then in episode 11, we unpack the technical side of the vehicle modifications in more detail and talked about the modifications that he was using to drive. So if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure you go back to listen to both episode 10 and 11. Plenty of gold in those ones. Ali.
G'day everyone, welcome along. This is episode 12, and in this episode we have another special guest, being Dee Ellen. I'm very excited myself to have a chat with Dee because she's actually a mother or family carer for the person with a disability, and I've spoken to her a little bit offline, and I really want to highlight these people in particular and the work they do. And I also know Dee, and I think she's one amazing mum. And the thing is I'm really excited about this because often the carers and the family members are kind of like the forgotten people in this. NDIS is all about, you know, the person and the OT, and basically the family members, as we've heard in so many of our stories, are a very, very key integral part of this process. In fact, one of the key parts of it. Yet there's not really that much out for them. So yeah, it'll be great to hear the story and help share some of that stuff with everybody else out there. So yeah, let's hear what she has to say.
Yeah, I can't wait for this one either. This one's the first time we've spoken to a carer. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Driving is something many take for granted, but when someone has an altered ability, then driving or getting out and about in your own car can be challenging. The Drive Able podcast unpacks the world of driving with a disability so you can experience the freedom that you desire. I'm Brad, and with me is Ali, and together we have over 30 years of experience in driving and disability. Enough with the intros, let's get into it.
Okay, in this episode, we are talking with Dee. Thank you for joining us today. Let's kick off by first introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your story, your family dynamic, who lives with you, and who's the one that's disabled.
Okay, my name's Dee. I'm a carer for my 47-year-old daughter, Leanne. Leanne has the disability. She has multiple disabilities. It's not just one. She obtained it during an operation when she was 9 months old. She lost some oxygen during it, but we were never informed. So it was a very long, and still is, ride of no proper diagnosis. Just every day we do find there's a different part of her life that becomes disabled. So we make the most of everything. And I have two other children. I have a middle daughter who's now given me a grandchild, which is the light of my life.
Congratulations.
And then the other one is a nearly 15-year-old foster child. I do that. I've had about 30 odd children in our house. Wow. It's something that I just enjoy. And she's, dear. So we'll bypass her. Okay. But that's our dynamics. We're very busy. We need to travel. We need to go. Leanne is a very, very, now, before NDIS, before the car, we had no support. We had no funding. It was me, and more me. We've had the NDIS since 2017.
And it's changed your world, has it? In a positive way?
Absolutely. It's taken us this long to get the amount of funding that we needed. In the first 12 months, we had the hardest fight, I think, knowing that what I wanted with Leanne, I've seen this system in around about 2008, 2009. I didn't know what it was called. It was at an expo at Rose Hill. I saw it poking out of the car, coming out, and I thought, oh my God, this would be amazing. Leanne had been dropped so many times from slide boards, and it was just, she just didn't want to go out. She didn't want to go out without me. There was no independence. And when I saw this, I thought, oh my God, but I kept walking because I thought, no, there's no way. There's no way I could afford it. There was just nothing.
Let's talk about that, because we know what you're talking about, but for the people that are listening in on the podcast, they've got no visual. They're not really sure probably what you're talking about. Let's talk about that thing that blew your mind, where you walked past at the expo. Let's unpack it. What is it that you walked past and went, we're never going to be able to afford this? Let's go back to that day and explain what you actually saw.
Well, it was just this car seat that turned around and came out of the passenger seat in the car. But that stage, it didn't have a base. It just came out and you transferred from that chair into your own wheelchair.
Mm-hmm. So it's a turnout seat. So the actual front passenger seat turns out of the front door opening and comes halfway out type of thing, doesn't it?
Yes. And then it comes to where your own wheelchair would align with it, and then you would slide across. Mm-hmm. So I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. So I locked it in the memory thing, went NDIS, and I knew NDIS was arriving about 2017. So in 2016, I went looking for it. I went searching, internet, wherever. I had no idea what the name of it was. I didn't know anything about it. So I found it on YouTube. I think it was in England. They had, or American. It was just this old man taking his wife out of the car, but it had a base this time. It actually had a wheelchair. So the passenger seat became the wheelchair. So there was no more transfers. There was nothing. Once Leanne was in, or the person was in this wheelchair, it just lifted them up into the car, and you just disconnected it and took the base around to the boot and hoisted it up. So I found it. And so then I had to find an engineering company that could do it. I found Mobility Engineering, and I'm in. And from then on, we just kept going back down there, having discussions, allowing Leanne to see it. That was, if Leanne could, or in her head, that's what she would do. And I remember on the way home after the first trip, I was too scared to say anything about it. And she turned around and said, that's pretty good. And I'm going, what's pretty good? She said, that chair. And I went, oh, okay. Would you like something like that? She goes, yeah, okay. So then we had a year. We literally had a year to get things happening, getting all the evidence that I thought we needed. Physios, not so much the OTs, because we didn't have funding at that stage, but I had specialists, I had doctors. So we had like Leanne's disability properly almost diagnosed. Her anxiety was least on there, why we needed to have this system, as in physically and mentally. So then we went, and I happened to run into our local federal MP. And this is a major part of this story. Mm-hmm. And I told her about the expectations I had for the NDIS, how I believe it was going to change not only Leanne's life, but our whole family dynamic. Leanne would become more independent. She would be able to do things more without me. I'm an aging parent. That's the only thing that scares me the most, is what's going to happen to Leanne if I'm not here. So we had this great discussion. So she turned and asked if she could follow us in our journey with the NDIS, make sure everything was okay. How did we navigate it? What did we need to do? How much evidence? So she came along with the ride, and truly we're so lucky that we did that, because it was a horror ride. It was the worst ride ever. We had people denying us, that were sitting in a room, didn't understand the fact that this was not only cost effective, but it was so simple. It was the most simplest. You weren't sitting in the third row in the back, locked in.
Oh, we need to unpack this. Can I press a pause on your story and actually delve into that bit a little bit for us?
Yeah.
As an occupational therapist, I've been involved in this battle for a participant as well, and just the other week we finally had it installed, where we've got the turnout seat, which turns into the wheelchair. So the actual driver or the passenger seat inside the car slides onto the wheelchair base, so there's no transfer actually involved. So that's the product that we're talking about. The battles that we've had to go through for this product, compared to being a wheelchair accessible van, where the NDIS are saying to the participant, no, we believe you need a wheelchair accessible van because of the transfers, and it's more cost effective for you that way. And the risks associated with, they pull out risks from files and so forth, which they have to do. They have to make sure that it's value for money, but the value for money elements in regards to function is something that really needs to be highlighted. From your point of view, in regards to function, what do you see the functional benefits of having a turnout seat that goes to a wheelchair compared to a wheelchair accessible van?
Well, I do believe it was more cost effective. We did the price comparisons, and by the time you got the hydraulic lift, the cutout of the van, the seat, all those kind of things, it would have cost, if not 2 or 3 times, as more than what this did. And not only that, it would have had to be a new wheelchair. A car seat isn't going to get old. You have your car seat for probably 20 years. So that's what this is. It's her car seat. So the only thing that will have to be redone is the power base of it, the scooter base. And so that's only every 3 to 5 years, and NDIS has already got that in there. They know that that's going to happen, and it is cost effective. We had to argue that comparison, that cost effectiveness of it, till they finally got it. But not only that, it's the personal thing. This is Leanne's car. So we bought the car for her.
Did you have it first before the NDIS funding?
Well.
I thought this question might cause a problem.
Well, we did have a car. We had a station wagon, but we knew, knowing that we did our research, went down there, what kind of car. I asked the engineers, what's the smallest car that we could. I didn't want the big van with a hydraulic lift up the back that we blocked Leanne in the 3rd row at the back. She does have epilepsy. She does have aspiration. So we needed her up front so that we could give her a drink, or we could calm her, or we could do anything like that. And she didn't want to jog along in the back row somewhere that she couldn't put a window down or couldn't turn the music up, and it was going to be her car. So the boys went out, they went looking, and they gave me a list. And we chose a Nissan X-Trail, because at that stage, it was exactly what we needed. It was compact. I've never driven anything more than a station wagon, so an SUV scared me anyway, but I picked it up, drove it, and it was great. We could, the program that we'd given Leanne, she could fit in it perfectly. We tweaked the program to suit Lee, and that's the best part of the Corona Turning Evo as well. And that's the full name of this system. You can actually program it to how you can move about in the car itself. Leanne, because it is a small, and Leanne's quite tall, she can't turn as we would turn. So we have to turn her sideways, put that in, and then she'll turn around after we're in. So we have a system. But the Corona can make that program, or it can make a 5-point turn program. So it goes in, out, in, until you finally get out. So it's up to the person who has the disability and what their disability is. So then, so off we went, and we had a look at cars. I didn't think I could afford. And this is where all these life stories come in. All these people came into our lives right at that moment. I was talking to an old mate of mine, and I said, we have to buy a new car. How am I going to do it? I've already talked to one of the car companies, and they said, look, we'll sort you out as far as a loan. We'll give you lowest interest as much. We'll help you as much as we can. And I was telling this friend of mine how wonderful that was, and she said, "Oh, I'm with the Lions Club. How about if I ask them? Maybe they'll give you the deposit." And I went, "Oh my goodness, that would be the best thing." Well, long story short, they bought the car.
Oh,
The whole thing. Oh, wow.
So it was $31,000. They paid for it. Done.
Unbelievable.
So, but they bought it before we even got the okay from the NDIS that we could hit this system. So there was a bit then.
Can I just touch on a point there for people listening? NDIS will only fund modifications to a vehicle of a specific age or kilometers. So the guidelines at the moment, at the time of this recording, is that the vehicle needs to be less than 5 years of age or less than 80,000 kilometers. It's changed to 80,000 kilometers now. So because of the bit of the backlash that people couldn't afford the cars that were inside their guidelines. And I really appreciate the NDIS from my point of view for doing that. Just to let you know, though, there is a grey area as well. If your cars don't meet that, then you can have a local government not government. Where I'm in South Australia, so it's the RAA. In New South Wales, it's
NRMA.
NRMA, and local states have their own authorities for this. You can have an inspection, an independent inspection of your vehicle, show your registration papers, show your kilometers, show that it's a roadworthy vehicle. Then the car's going to last for, we'll try to prove that the car is going to last for at least 5 to 8 years. So they can show that there's going to be that value for money. Don't need to supply those assessments of the vehicle if it's less than 5 years or less than 80,000. So I just wanted to point that out for people listening. Vehicles need to be of a specific age and quality for NDIS to give the tick of approval, or to help them give the tick of approval for modifications to a vehicle. And if they don't, it doesn't mean that you can't try to get funding for that car. It just may not get approved. I just need to clear that up for everybody.
I'll interject a little bit on top of that as well. You can also, because we've done it a fair bit, depending on the modification. And I wanted to actually just cover this little topic as well on this point with this, like the swivel seat option as well. So with something like this tourney seat, you can unbolt it and rebolt it to another car. So we've had customers in the past that have given, I guess, assurance to the NDIS that, look, when this car is gone and we're going to get a new one, we will pay for the rebolting and unbolting. It's maybe only a couple of grand, but we'll cover that cost. And then I guess the other thing to tie into that in terms of this value for money point is in our experience, those swivel seats like that particular, we try not to kind of talk too much about the brands, but that particular brand there, I know its life cycle is on average 20 years, and people keep their cars in Australia on average for 10 years. So that seat, it's got 20 years of life in it, easily. And they last for, like, they've been around in Europe for 30 years, and they're still, some of them 30 years old, still going. So it's designed as a product that kind of stays with you for life, and you take it with you from car to car. And that's a real benefit of it as compared to, let's say, cutting a car, because once you cut the car, that's it. Like the car, and 10 years later, you got to throw it in the bin, literally in the bin. Like you can't really.
The resale value is terrible.
No.
Of
well, we've got all the original stuff as well, like the original car seat and everything. And well, now because I've got added family and Leanne's disability is deteriorating a little bit more, so we now need 2 support workers. So we have to go bigger car.
So people listening into this episode, make sure you tune into the next episode, episode 12, where Ali and I will dig deeper into the nuts and bolts of this system and how it works with NDIS. I wanted to touch on it in this episode. Ali's touched on it as well, but we will really dig deep into this area when we tune in for the next episode where we'll get into the real nitty gritty. So sorry, Dee, we just wanted to point that out now. So let's get back to your story.
Well, with the NDIS, you need evidence. There's no doubt about it. They are evidence.
Obsessed.
And the first AT guy, he knocked it back. He denied there was no way we were going to have it. He didn't believe in it. He didn't think it was the right thing. He was sat in the office, had no idea what I was talking about. So he didn't even have a decent objection over it, you know. So we went out and got further evidence, and he lost his job, and so did his director, because I ended up bringing in my MP, and she ended up representing us in Parliament. We ended up going to the Commissioner about it. It was all he said, she said. He didn't like the idea that I knew probably more than him. He was the assistive technology. I was just a carer. So, but I'd done my research. I knew, and I know my daughter. So it's evidence. So we end up going to a second expo. We end up going and we literally tried every single thing, handheld, slider board, everything. And she wrote it down. The OT wrote it down. And we had probably 13, 14 page second report. We gave it to them. You know, they wanted evidence. Here's our evidence. But like I said, unfortunately, the Lion Club had already bought the car. So in his spiel, he was saying that we wanted this system to match the car rather than us. Yeah. So it was just a fallacy. He didn't even read the report. His idea was also that Leanne didn't need a powered wheelchair because everywhere, and that was including shopping centres and recreational centres, should adhere to a disability, not the fact that she goes to football or she goes to the car races or she goes travelling or she goes up hills and down mountains. We didn't need a powered wheelchair. He didn't think she should only go to two places. So he was very, very, and this is what people will come up against, these people who don't know what you're talking about. So you just need evidence. It's evidence and evidence and more evidence. You need impact statements, what it would mean, what the difference between having it and not having it, how the independence will come along. Leanne now is getting ready to go out with 2 support workers. She'll go up to Newcastle today, whereas 10 years ago, she would not leave the house. That's what this system has made the difference.
That's amazing. And
that's massive. Yeah, that's huge. Now we've been to Victoria for traveling. We go, Dubbo. We just did Dubbo Zoo, but it's not just traveling in the car, but it's a wheelchair as well. It's such a simple thing, and it's such a great power. It's like a scooter with a control. So you've got the power wheelchair base. You've got the power wheelchair. Powered. Yeah. So for people tuning into this, you may want to go and watch the YouTube video of this as well, because in Ali's background, there's actually a picture of this system, and we might touch on it, have a better picture of it in the next episode that we have. But you can actually slide the chair onto a power wheelchair, and then the power wheelchair offers so much independence. Yeah.
So you can either have you're controlling the person with the disability, or it's attendant control, which is at the back, which is just another little bracket that sits on there, and you turn it on and away you go.
And that's what you've got?
That's what we have. Mm-hmm. There was a few things that we did think about when we ordered Leanne's wheelchair. She's actually left-handed, but the power controls are on the right.
Yep.
So we didn't think about that one, but not that she would probably control it anyway, but but the best part of it is, even if with an attendant, you can switch it over to the front and you can walk beside them and just still control it. So you're not always behind them pushing, you're walking along a nice
like
wide
walking
path,
hand in hand.
Absolutely. So there's all these things. It raises up and down. So if you're at football and you want to see above the crowd, you can see above the crowd. It can be manual as well, but we chose the powered, mainly because of my age. I was getting older and it was getting harder to push her. And it costs exactly the same, or almost same amount as a normal powered wheelchair. Not very much difference between costing. And the costing of the modification was only minimal at that stage too. So all up, it was under their amount of funding that they would do without having to go to anywhere else. And that's why we got it passed, because it was basically one shop. We didn't have to go and get it somewhere else. It was all done at the mobility, at the engineers, and they did it all in 4 or 5 days. Once it came into Australia, it was done.
With the system also, I think they are definitely similar in price to cutting the car. So from a price point of view, it's value for money. They're great value for money for what you get, from what I've seen anyway.
And I think we were probably one of the first ones to do like a family car as well. So it was easy. It was always on the road, like it was, like even petrol and things like that. It was just a normal car. It was all dignified. It was all, instead of lugging him out the back and all the rest, it was just so dignified. She's the queen. She kind of like comes out of there and she waves to everybody, she thinks. And the amount of people that have actually caught up with us in shopping centres or in the football where they have elderly people and they go, oh my God, this is amazing. Where'd you get it from? So, we are a walking advertisement for.
It's amazing how just sitting in the front compared to sitting up the back in the boot makes such a difference. And that's the real big thing that I guess a lot of people, this is where, to unpack a couple of the little things you said, I wonder if there's a bit of difficulty around the fact that there's no formal diagnosis maybe, and does that make it harder for you to justify things?
Well, we did get enough that, well, prior to all that, in 2008, we found out that this operation did cause her injury. So, and it was just due to a great neurologist who, came out with, where did she get the brain injury? And I went, so that came out, and that's when, because she started with epilepsy. So so we did have a diagnosis. We did sort of kind of say, well, look, she has an acquired brain injury. So we could just go on that. And because of that, we never know what it's going to change in her life. So we knew the future as well, that she's only going to get worse. She's not going to get any better. So we needed something that would grow with her no matter what. So we weren't going to be changing systems, or we weren't going to be changing wheelchair. We weren't going to be changing things to suit her all the way down the track. We've met this with this system. You actually can put in the chair itself, you can put in cushions and things where they need supports more around the back. You can put in on the underneath the seat, so you can have it softer, or if they're staying in it a long time, you can change the what they're sitting on. So there's so much more still in this so-called car seat, and it will last for 20 years, and we can just keep changing those things.
You know what's interesting, Dee, you mentioned something before about how the NDIS was kind of not paying you a full attention because you're just a carer, but you sound like a bloody expert.
I totally agree.
And the thing is that what's interesting is, in my experience, the mums and dads and the carers are the bloody experts. They're the ones having to sort through all the crap and find everything out. And they know everything about everything. And that's why I wanted to, I guess, talk to you. And I knew that would be the case. And we see it all the time. I guess it's really cool listening to it. And
can I just say something there?
NDIS would listen to the carers more.
Absolutely. I totally agree. As the occupational therapist, I have to advocate on behalf of the client and their carer. In your case, UD, and it's hard to portray the message with the same information and with the same emotion and the same elements that you can, Dee, because you live it every day, and we meet you for a couple of hours and try to determine whether it's going to be appropriate or not, and make a judgment call based on a few hours worth of work. And it's sometimes
I'm a bit of a research person too. I'm not going to give something, and I'm and I suppose I'm a little bit more, I don't take things from easily. Like I don't like being gifted. and that's probably why I do foster care, because I want to give thanks back to whatever comes our way. And I think it was, I did so much research on this because I didn't want to waste the money. I didn't want to get something and then find that Leanne hated it, or that it just still didn't do what we wanted to do. It's like anything else we buy. If we buy a dishwasher, you want to make sure that it does what you want it to do. Otherwise, it's just a waste of money. So this was not going to be a waste of money. So I went in there and I knew. I went to Car Expos. We kept going down to the engineer. We kept trying it. We kept letting Leanne look at it. We kept getting in her head, and we took the OT down there, and she was just blown away. She'd never seen anything like it either.
She hadn't seen it before either. Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you. Were you educating the OT?
Yes, and that's why sometimes I go to the expos with these engineers, because I am that carer, because we can tell them how much it did take. The OT came with us the first time, and she also explained how much evidence we actually had to do and how unfair. They even, it was tough. They even thought that she was more my friend than an OT at one stage, that she was doing it. And she was doing it because we bought the car first. So she was making up the stories. So that's why we got rid of the planner. He wasn't the right person to, and unfortunately come up against me. So a lot of this stuff went to the commissioner. I'm glad he came up
against you, Dee.
Yeah, well, we went to the commissioner with her as well, because a lot of it was over the phone. They never even met Leanne. The stories that they made up about her, that she stayed in bed all day and watched TV. She didn't even have a TV in a room. They had no idea. And the funding was minimal. Funding was only enough for 6 hours a week. She's 24/7. That's what we started off with. Now we're up to over $250,000. Plus we've got all our equipment, but it did take me 12 months. And it wasn't just the turny. It was an electric bed. It was a shower chair even. They just refused everything. So we just went to the commissioner, changed a lot of things, made sure it was no more phone conversations. It had to be face-to-face. And once we got that face-to-face, it was done within 24 hours. 9 months later, it took 24 hours once they saw her. Yeah.
Well, I actually want to thank you on behalf of a lot of the participants now, because I think things are easier because of the trailblazing stubbornness of people like you. Because that's the unfortunate thing is a lot of people would have given up and just thought, oh well, not possible, and gone back to their same old lives. But the intention of the baseline intention of NDIS is what you're doing with it, and what you see the results of that it's well worth the money,
Well, I always whatever conversation I had with the NDIA, it was that you've even forgotten your own mantra. It was about your choice, your voice, your control. This is what my daughter wants. This is her choice. She has control. So she's now got a voice. Now you just give us the money. And that's what you have to do. You have to always look up their policies. Make sure you parallel with their policies. If they've got it written there, then you go in there and you go, well, hang on, this is where it's written. This is your evidence as well. So you keep going back to what they have, their guidelines, and you follow their guidelines, but it is your control still. You can use that guideline where you need to use it. So always never give up. There's always somebody that will help you. And I'm a big believer in your local MP, especially opposition, because they're always fighting. We ended up becoming very good friends with Bill Shorten over this because it was just not one review. In 9 months, we had 8 reviews to get the right amount. So that is not fair. So I handed him some all the paperwork and said, here, read this. This is what's happening. This is why NDIS is going broke. Not because of the people, the participants, it's because of the paperwork, the time wasting, everything else. And it's got to be stopped. It's got to be stopped. No more reviews. So we've just had our last review. And so now they've changed me again back to NDIA. So they look after us because it's no, I don't think any local area coordinator wants us.
Okay. They know what they're dealing with, you know the go. So that's good though. It's great to hear. Like that, it echoes a lot of the stories that we've spoken to with a lot of people in these interviews, that, the families working together is the key components. The key theme is really work together, don't give up. And what you said is something that comes out in a lot of the interviews. People tend to get on the phone and then you'll have some person on the other end who's just a bureaucrat or a paper pusher, and they tell you something that's actually not based on regulation. They just pull it out of their backside, and then you think that because that person's in a position of authority, you think they're telling you the truth, and so you need to go sometimes do your own research, check the own guidelines, and put that back in their face, and then they'll accept it. But it's a whole new framework, and you got to understand there's thousands of people working in that organization. So,
and it's not only them. We did come across a problem that Leanne owned her original car, and when we bought the new one, the RMS in New South Wales decided that in their wisdom and in their policies that a person with a cognitive disability can now not own their own car. And I went, what? Hang on, we've been paying you all this time. She's owned her car, so what's so different from yesterday to today? So we went to the Anti-Discrimination Board and had a fabulous pro bono solicitor who said, no, you can't do that, And I told this guy, and I said, well, that'd be like, because you can't open up a drawer with a key, you can't own a house, or you can't own a TV because you can't work the control. And I said, what if you owned a Ferrari and I hit you across the head because you're so stupid and I caused a brain injury? Would you still like to own that Ferrari? And he goes, oh, that's stupid. And I said, well, you won't be working here as a manager in 24 hours. And he wasn't. But if I didn't keep fighting it, my daughter would not own her car, because you just think because she couldn't sign. So I just went, well, I'll sign for her. We'll have safeguards. People will. And their policy was, because if it was a blind person or something, she wouldn't be able to see if a support driver went through a red light. She wouldn't be able to say who drove it. And I'm going, we have logbooks. We know who's driven that car. We have safeguards. So it was just silly excuses. So make sure whoever is listening, people with disabilities can own their own car. It is cheaper. They get the free rego. NDIS will pay the difference between the insurances, between a normal insurance and the system. So they will pay the difference with that. They will also give you an allowance every fortnight, around about $70 for petrol as such, and it's less Ks. You're paying 82 cents a K if you're using a support workers. So half your funding is going in Ks. So if you own your car, you'll go further, you'll go wherever you want to go. And again, you've got control. You don't have to just go down the street because that's all that you can afford with the Ks.
It makes the community more independent and stronger as well.
Absolutely. That's where we needed the community participation, because that's what Leanne was. She volunteers at her football, where we go to play football. We volunteer at the cricket, where we go and play or watch the cricket. So we have all this community participation as well. And we could not, there's no way in the world could we travel from the Central Coast to Sydney in in somebody else's car. It would just not be enough funding. So by owning our own car, all we have to do is put petrol in the tank and she can go wherever she wants to go.
Can I just touch on a couple of points that you just made then for the people that are listening? You touched on it really quickly, but I don't think many people know this. You were saying that there's a petrol allowance?
Yeah.
Through NDIS?
There's transport allowance. It's called a transport allowance. So there's different levels. There is one level when it's just community participation. Mm-hmm. There's a second level when you may be looking for work. And there is a third level, very high level, if you have to be remote, or if you are working and you need to travel in taxis or things like that. So there are 3 levels of transport funding that you can get.
Yep, and you needed that written into your plan
Absolutely.
after the car was modified.
Yeah.
The other one
and prior to that, it used to be a mobility allowance, I think, before NDIS came in. So they said that we would never lose anything that we had. So anybody who had a mobility allowance, had to have it. So it just went straight in, automatically in.
Okay.
Now it's different. You actually have to have it put into your plan.
Mm-hmm. So make sure the people listening to this that you consider that when you're having modifications done to a vehicle as a passenger, make sure that allowances are put in there in regards to transport costs.
And in this plan, I've made sure that we have X amount because we knew how much in a year now, what we need to keep it looked after, like say new tires, new bits and pieces. So we've had that written in now that there's X amount of money in there, that if we need any new parts, anything else, then we can just go to that funding. And how we did that is because if Leanne didn't have a disability, therefore we wouldn't need it. So because we associated it with the disability, we have now got funding put aside that as well.
Did your OT have to help out with that, or did you fight that battle with NDIS yourself?
Well, bit of both.
Okay.
I just said, well, hang on. I did actually just bring it up because they didn't know. They didn't even know that there was a difference between insurances and things, so that they would pay the difference. So I just sort of kind of said, well, if Leanne didn't have a disability, we wouldn't be needing any of this. So it is associated with her disability. And so it's like a special fork or a spoon. If you, none of this, it's all an extension of her disability. It's all an extension of her going out in the community. So we just open, and I was open to having a rejection, but they didn't. They just realized that, yep, that is necessary.
It's an associated cost
to
do with the disability. And I think that's really important. And it's something that is easily forgotten in regards to, here's the modification. Does it work? Does it not work?
Yep.
The associated ongoing costs to do with that modification to a vehicle needs to be considered in the long run too. And insurance is one of those big things. But
you've got to remember, it's not to the vehicle itself. It's got nothing to do with the car insurance or anything. It's what's in that car. So it's the insurance, the extra insurance is for the modifications. So if there's an accident, it can be taken out, all those kind of things, as well as the chair. We've also the chair, if the support worker runs into a child, it's all insured as well. We wouldn't have to do that if Leanne didn't have a disability. So it's all about just not your normal everyday costs of car insurance and things, but the extra bits. That's what the NDIS will pay for.
And do you use a standard insurance company, one of the well-known ones?
I use Blue Badge.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, there is a company out there. Hopefully it's okay to spruik them. There's no associated costs with this at all. There's no plugging them for endorsements or anything else here. This is Blue Badge Insurance is designed for people with disabilities. And
we found that we had to name our support workers, every one of them, and we can use up to 10 a week. And I had to have their names on for them to be covered. Blue Badge, as long as they're working, they're a support worker, they're in the car, they're driving, or as a passenger, they're covered straight away. Anybody who as long as Leanne is in that car, then they are covered straight away.
That sounds really good. I mean, I think we have to slowly but surely start wrapping it up. The one thing
we could go on talking for hours, Dee.
It's been fantastic. Without a good OT, honestly, you're lost as a carer. I needed the language that only professionals can use when you're doing reports. So don't try. Your impact statement from a carer or a participant is major. But if you don't understand the NDIS language, you're lost it straight away. So you still do need those professionals. You do need your allied health, your specialists, your GPs. They just know the language. It's
a partnership. You know, that's one of the things I was just about to say. It's the themes of a lot of what you're saying is it's all about community partnership and all participation all together. And it just seems like if you want to break it down on a higher level, most of the issues you've got or have had is just trying to get people to participate within this whole process and bring in their part and work cohesively. And that's the challenging part. But once we get there, it's amazing. And I guess also often what happens is particularly with NDIS, the discussion becomes around how much money and everything's all about money.
Yes,
But the thing is, I mean, knowing the story of you guys, and as you said beforehand, you were just she was just sitting at home every day, and now she's volunteering, footy games, all of this stuff. You're talking about chalk and cheese in terms of community participation.
Absolutely.
And whatever money that you mentioned, it's worth it, because even when to be honest, a lot of people don't realize it, but even if you break it down to a financial thing, one person participating within a community is worth more than whatever hundreds of thousands of dollars you said per year. It's when you break it down to the money, they're still bringing in much more than that into their community just by being participating.
Absolutely. We have 2 support workers every day. We travel, they go for coffees, they go shopping, which employs, it's NDIS pays for itself if only they just allowed just to I know people can rot the system, but there are safeguards. That's just silly. There's silly talk. That's silly. There is so many safeguards you cannot pass go without somebody knowing what you're doing. So, and just while I remember, the other point is this system was great for us. It may not be great for everybody, but I know my engineers have got a workroom. You can go down there. You can check out what's available. There are so many different systems. There is so many different things. There is so many. Don't just think, oh, this won't work, so I'm going to try, or I won't do anything. There is every single thing that there is so many solutions.
We need you to do our sign-off tagline, Dee. Our sign-off tagline is make sure you get out there and try stuff.
Yeah. Don't wait for your expos. Go find your local engineers. They know they have the best people, and they can talk you through it, So that's all and I know my engineers were brilliant. They still put up with my phone calls every now and then going, hi, I'm back, and we will be again because I need another car. I need a bigger car. So we have to go bigger now.
Oh, well, that's something we didn't even touch on is the other use of the vehicle, is that the vehicle is used for your bigger family. And unfortunately, we've run out of time, but it still needs to be part of the consideration. Who else is using that vehicle? It's your daughter's vehicle. It's owned by her. It's mainly there for her, but there's more than her in the family. And there's yourself, there's support workers, there's foster children in your case as well. There's so many other factors that need to be considered as well in this. And that's why, rear seats, I'm assuming, are really important in that vehicle.
Well, you've got to be careful too, because a lot of this equipment takes up room. So you have to, and that's something we didn't think about was because we travel, we've lost, say, luggage space because there's a hoist and the base is in the boot. So, and then the passenger seat, the system itself is bigger. So you've almost lost half a passenger seat behind in the second row. So we're now, and because it was only her and me, I didn't have support workers. I didn't have anything. I thought, yep, this will great. We can do this. Then I got a support workers, and then we got another child, and then so it just keeps growing. So now we have to go.
I want to finish it off with one more question. How much space would you have lost if it was a wheelchair accessible van?
Well, we wouldn't have had 2 seats, I think, and no boot at all.
That's it.
So
how much luggage could you have taken?
Well, you just don't. You just can't. Cutting it, getting it in. At least we can still fit in 4 people. Plus, we can stack luggage. We have it at our feet, and we still travel. We went. Like I said, we had 10 days in Victoria. We've been to Dubbo Zoo. We've been to Queensland and back again. And it's just we go to, and part of Leanne's goals is to go to every away game of the football club that she follows. So we've got 3 to go, and that's 2 are local. So one's in Wollongong, Campbelltown, but the other one is in Townsville. So that's our next road trip.
Ooh, that's a challenge. Should be good.
That's a month.
You might need a trailer for that one. For your luggage.
I'll be keen to get you back after you get the new car, and then see how that all went as well. And unpack that journey. So I guess let's wrap it up. And
we finish off every interview, Dee, with one final question. And that final question is, and I think you've touched on this already, but cars are more than getting from A to B. And you've spoken about how much the vehicle is used for the sport and that kind of stuff. But is there anything else that you'd like to add in regards to how the car's used to help meet the personal needs of you and your family?
Gee, you know, like we don't do anything silly in it, or we don't do anything that's not unusual in it, but it takes Leanne to a whole new world. It takes her to where she wants to go.
Yeah.
So it is a life-changing thing. And I think this is where NDIS does not see the end result as well. If only they saw not just the beginning, not just the fights and the arguments, but the greatness that it does. The NDIS is the best thing that has ever happened to our lives and to many people's lives, but it's just such a hard fight. But for Leanne, this is an absolute life changer. You know, she can go wherever she chooses. She wakes up in the morning. She now chooses her roster for the week, where she wants to go, what she wants to do. She wants to visit every zoo in Australia. So far, we've done about 10. So it's her goals. It's her dreams. She's finally living her dream.
Yeah.
So that's what.
Have you been to the one in Canberra, the zoo in Canberra?
Yes.
Yeah, I just went there 2 weeks ago with my family. That is such an awesome zoo.
Yeah, and they are great too because they give carers and the person with the disability free entry.
Yeah. It's a great zoo. It's
we've done Canberra. We just did Dubbo. We stayed at Dubbo Zoo, so that was with the animals. So that was pretty. Yeah, that was excellent.
Probably wouldn't have been able to do that in the past. So.
No, we didn't go anywhere. You know, we struggled to get to New Zealand one year. We went there for a month. They hired a car, but that was prior to all this, and that was just. And I think that's the last time we've done overseas because you can't do that anymore. So now it's basically hit the road and off we go. So
I think that's a wonderful note to wrap it up on. Thank you very much for sharing. I think we could just keep on talking for another hour or so, but we do need to think about our listeners and wind it up there. A massive thank you to you, Dee, and sharing the story of how it's affected you, but also how it's opened up the world for Leanne. I really appreciate you coming on and advocating for your own story, but also for NDIS as well.
Yeah.
So too many takeaways for me in this one, Ali.
We've got a whole episode that we're going to talk about the takeaways. I've got a whole point of it. But one big
writing down notes left, right, and center.
I love the fact that we're speaking to you, Leanne, as a carer, because I think that the carers and the family members, more people can listen to you because they need that confidence. You know, they get shot down so much, and because the parts of the scheme, no part of the scheme is designed for you. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of this outsider, but you're fighting with all of your heart and passion for the people that you love. And I love hearing it. And that's why I wanted to share the story, because I want other people to get that confidence, because that's where the fight comes. You know, it comes from that community being around you and your family being around you. And if they've got that confidence to fight against these people and, you know, the NDIS for the right thing that they truly believe in, that's all that matters, you know. So thanks very much. And that's a big thank you to you know, for that, you know.
No, that's fine. That's my, you know, that's carers. That's what parents do, and it's no different whether they have a disability or not. It's what parents do, and I think we do have to stick together. So if there's any questions come out of this and you need further information, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Or
Dee, is there a way that they could do that? Is there an email they could send?
Yeah, Ali can go via
some of your details.
Yep, we'll put it in the show notes for people. If that's okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And anything at all, any information, even if they want me to come along or help them do an impact statement or whatever, I'm there. I'm at it, because we all need to stick together on this.
Dee, you're
awesome, Dee.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
Thank you very
No
much.
worries.
So, look, Dee, we should actually throw to you to do this sign off because you've nailed it in your comments earlier on. But as we say
Hang
in
on.
every episode, if you have any queries about what you can do or what will work for you, get in contact with your local OT or mobility dealer or engineer, as you've said, and set yourself up with a trial. Trials really do put you in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Dee, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Dee.
Okay, no worries. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.